What's up, guys, and welcome back for another EVE Online mining video. This one's going to be going over just kind of a basic general Porpoise command ship boosting fit. You could take this out in high sec for your procures or your coveters or whatever you got, and also it's kind of fit for null as well, for like helping tank the rats and when you're doing things like merc mining, or if you're going out to get like Hardener, Vespa II, or whatever the case may be. Or even just like ice if you're not really too concerned about compressing on field. It's a very cheap command ship. It's a very cheap entry into getting mining burst on your mining ships just to help with efficiency. I use it quite a bit. I use it mostly for merc mining in nullsec, and if I have to do any sort of like Veldspar mining in high sec for trit, I'll go out there with this and kind of blast it. It's not built for, this is a fit not built for drones. You can run mining drones with it just for a little bit of added yield, but not necessary at all. As you can see here, these are the base skills required for the Porpoise hull itself, but there's a lot of other skills that go into the things like the industrial core and also the compressor, and then also just making the mining burst a little bit better. Starting off with the fit, in the high slots, we're going to be using two Mining Foreman Burst 2s. I use Laser Field Enhancement Charge and then the Laser Optimization Charge. I don't use the Preservation Charge because the crystals usually last pretty long anyway if you're using modulated strips on your miners, or if your corp mates are using those. So I find they're better value in just running these two for the range and the cycle time. And I'm also using a Medium Industrial Core 2. Most of the time we're not sieging with this because we're either like getting ready to be able to come off grid really fast. But if there is a case where we need to just like siege, compress, or just siege for a little bit extra boost, it's very viable because it's only 75 seconds cycle time. So out of all the industrial cores, this is probably the most easy to use just because of the 75 seconds. And then I'm running the Asteroid or Compressor 1 just in case we're doing things like Hardener Vespa II, or if we're doing high sec or low sec anomaly, or we don't run into any problems. We can actually stay out on field a little bit longer with this. But these two will require you to pack a little bit of heavy water with you, so keep that in mind. For the mid slots, we're running a large Shield Booster 2, and then a Multispectrum Shield Hardener 2, and then an EM Amplifier 2, and then a large Shield Extender 2. All this tank really comes down to just nullsec rats and just tanking them. The large Shield Booster 2 is what's going to help, kind of just stave off some damage when it's coming from, battlecruisers or cruisers or battleships when you're, mining with your guys in nullsec. Rats in high sec won't do much towards this. And most of the time, if you are caught on grid in high sec with gankers, they're probably going to blast past this anyway because they're going to bring enough to take you out, which is why you should always just warp the fleet off when you see a spike in local, or if you're in null, you should always warp the fleet off to a pos when you see a nuke come in. The low slots, we're using a damage control 2 for added tank, and then also a reinforced Bulkhead 2. This helps with like people rush in and try to gank you, but there's no reason why you should ever get caught here. If you don't want this extra tank down here, you can throw inertial stabilizers here just to make your align time a little bit better to get off grid, which is what I usually do. But middle of the road, kind of generally speaking, the reinforced Bulkhead coupled with the damage control 2 is a pretty good choice for the lows. For our rigs, we're using a medium processor overclocking unit 1. We're using 2 of them, and then a medium core defense extender 1. We're using tech 1s just to bring the cost down and just kind of help with the shield a little bit, and then the CPU, because of the shield boosters requirement, is pretty heavy for that. For our drones, they usually carry around 8 or 9 of the light tech 2s, and then around 8 or so of the medium tech 2s as well. And you throw these out depending on what rat classes you have in nullsec. But for the most part, you're not going to be going up against any players with this, as you should be just warping the fleet off whenever you have danger. Our EHP on this comes in at around 69,000 EHP, and we have a good balance of resistances in the shield, and then our targeting range is all based on skills. All these numbers are going to be based on skills, so yours might be a little bit different than mine. I'm hitting about 62.5 kilometers for targeting range. If you're not running the industrial core, then you're going to get about 125 meters a second, and then your drone control range is about 57k. This is cap stable when you don't have the shield booster on, which is going to be most of the time that you're flying this. If you're dealing with rats or you're tanking rats, then when you turn this booster on, you'll have about 2 minutes and 5 seconds based on my numbers and my skills. But chances are, if you're fighting rats, you're probably either working on getting off grid or you're almost done mining anyway. You can just go to another area. For the most part, this is kind of built for blitz, burst, Mercoxis mining in nullsec, but works extremely well in places like highsec and lowsec. But for lowsec in particular, I would definitely switch this tank out for probably inertial stabilizers just to help you align out if you're not already dragging in the direction of your safe. This comes in at about 190 million in JITA. Most of that will be the actual hull itself, so it's a relatively cheap ship just to kind of go out and do ninja, low sec mining, or not to have a whole lot of loss if you get taken down by rats or even like other players or whatever. It's very easy to replace this. I would definitely recommend that if you're running any sort of like fleet in nullsec, you use a POS, right? Because with the command burst, whenever you use these on another capsuleer, it's going to give you a weapons timer, and you will not be able to dock in any station until that weapons timer is gone. So there's a couple ways you can actually get around this. You can either warp everybody off, all the miners off, and you can cloak in place, and then once these burst try to recycle, it'll actually just cut them off, and you can kind of just like stay cloaked while your weapons timer is kind of chilling. But I think it's much more effective with this fit to just run a POS in your system. And what would you be doing there is, like, if a nuke comes into local, you would just warp the entire fleet to a safe nav that you have set up inside the POS, and then you can actually cancel your burst mid warp and then just kind of sit and chill here in a POS until your weapons timer goes away. And if that nuke leaves field, then you can just warp from this POS to your station to a direct dock or an insta dock nav. I've been very fortunate in my mining to not lose any mining ships, and that's just from being very alert and attentive when mining. And that goes without saying if you're running a fleet of just yourself, or if you're actually running a fleet with your corp mates. The rules are pretty simple, right? If you go into low sec to ninja mine, you're taking on a lot of risk, and you should be attentive anyway. But you should never just like AFK or even semi AFK anywhere when mining, right? So some of the biggest things about running fleets for mining and retaining your ships and retaining and getting your yield and your ore to actual market is to be attentive of what's happening around you. For high sec, if you see any spikes in local, it's better just to get off grid. If you should be running D-scan, and if you see things on D-scan like Catalyst or anything that's out of the ordinary for the system that you're mining in, it's definitely a good idea just to get off grid. And if you actually like mine, in a system that for a while, you'll start to know the regulars in that system, and you'll be able to better tell when things are kind of like, when things are kind of up to no good, right? And also mining away from major market hubs and away from major trade routes will help you as well, because you won't get as much traffic through those systems. And in nullsec, it's even easier, right? It's actually, nullsec is probably safer for mining than highsec, because most of the time, if you're with a corporation in nullsec, your corporation is going to be usually the only ones in your system, right? Unless there's other blues in the system with you. But if you see a neutral player come into local, you just warp everybody off to a POS or to an insta-dock nav, right? There's almost no reason why you should ever get tackled unless you just get unlucky, mid-siege or something like that. But if you mine in a really hot area, then sieging is probably not a good idea, right? That's when you would use things like drag mining or other methods that allow you to get off grid if something happens within an instant. Because even if you are less than 1 AU from a gate mining with a Porpoise and like some skiffs or procure, when you see them pop into local, if you immediately warp the fleet to like a POS or an instadock, you will get off, right? And also, you should never mine near zero. And what I mean by that is, if you go to like a ore anomaly in nullsec, you should never just warp zero to that anomaly and mine right there with the range of your ships. Your goal should always be to mine with your fleet as far away from zero as possible, so that when that nuke comes in system, if you're still on your way of warping out, if they figure out where you're at, then they're just hitting every anomaly to hope they get lucky. They're gonna warp 0 to that anomaly, and if you just if you just mine as far away from 0 as possible, then you give yourself a little bit extra time of getting off grid. Same thing works for high sec, right? I always mine on the outside arc of a mining belt, never near 0, right? Because I always know, you should always know where the newt is going to come into the belt, and it's almost always usually 0. But if you're, on the opposite side of the belt, on the outside of the arc, and you're far enough away that your miners can hit the rocks, but it still might be a 20, 30, or even 40k move, even through rocks to get to you, it gives you more time to get off grid. So fleet mining is one of the best ways to actually get, good IS per hour. And when you couple it with good fits and good mining tactics and just being, alert, then, you will profit, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.